Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. It is a real privilege to be once again with Lav. We have already done this. After when there was a kind of threatening moment in Madrid against you. You have to be in. This is something problematic.
That's okay. Yeah. It's working. Yeah.
And then he went to Mexico, to a film festival that I used to work, and we did a kind of panel for 1 hour and a half talking. Here we have less time, and we have to be Germans in the sense of the time. But maybe because you are the master of time, we could be a little bit disobedient and talk a little bit more.
Yeah.
Let me first, just a few words to frame this in the setup of the film festival. I think the whole idea came up in May during the Cannes Film Festival. At this moment we were talking, Jens, Albert, Catherine, Dario, about the idea, how is our festival going on. And we realized that we have to add something else. It's not just the typical prices, the sections, you know, as everything is in Germany, something, it works, it repeats itself. So we were thinking, and immediately came the idea that maybe we could do something about taking an important filmmaker nowadays. One of them is growing as becoming one of the biggest filmmakers of the future. That would be the case, maybe the Sciammas case, Céline Sciammas, and she has only 4 films. Or to take someone who is already a master, a new master of cinema. So the master is, of course, this guy who came from Philippines.
Don't believe the hype.
No, it's true. It's true. It's true. And yes, it is, because if you think about nowadays who are the filmmakers of our era, the filmmakers who reestablished the relationship between cinema and their times and this century, well, we have to think in Pedro Costa, we have to think in Apichatpong Berazetacool, we have to think in Lucrecia Martel, we have to think in Xia Shanke, and we have to think in Lav Diaz. There are 10 names that nowadays they are part of what cinema used to be, in the sense of what does it mean to be an author in cinema. So my approach will be try to understand an author, try to understand what once many decades ago Mr. Jean-Luc Godard with the people from the Cahiers du Cinéma, when the Cahiers du Cinéma used to be yellow, not when it became with a lot of colors. They used to call politic of authors, that in English was very bad translated as author theory. They didn't say author theory, but if not, politics of authors. They have an idea behind that, and maybe through the discussion, what is behind my survey of questions towards him will be with that idea in my forward. So, but there is an immediately problem if I want to establish he as an author, because according to myself, Lav Diaz not only is an obvious author. If you see a shot by Lav Diaz, it's immediately recognizable. You see a shot, the way the camera is, where the camera is, the relationship between space, bodies, nature, furniture. You immediately understand this is a Lav Diaz film. And it doesn't need even to be in black and white, which is, of course, something that most of your films are. Not all, most of them. It's something that it's not very frequently that you recognize through a shot a filmmaker. In this case, it is. But at the same time, and that is the paradox, and I think that is the wonderful paradox in the case of Lav Diaz, it is, yes, absolutely, he is an author, but at the same time, he belongs to a tradition. And the first talk, my first question would be how he feels, how he sees himself in the middle of a tradition of cinema, which is always, if you follow people like Tahid Dilik, I don't know how to pronounce his name, if you see even Lino Broca, if you see the new one, what I would say the consequence of Lav Diaz, like Jean Torres, like Anthony Gonzalez, like Raya Martin. So all those filmmakers, they are also belonging to a certain wave of doing cinema which belongs to a tradition that he maybe is the pope of that. Let me put it in that way. But at the same time, they are absolutely singular. So there is a kind of dialectical movement between, on one hand, to be an author, and on the other hand, to belong to a certain tradition of cinema, which understands cinema and history with capital H, which understands cinema and territory with capital T, and a way to also include sometimes the mythical frame, the beliefs which belongs to those places. So all this is implied usually in Filipino cinema and also in his film. So from that point of view, I would like to ask you, until now I will only ask questions, not to talk about. How do you perceive yourself in the long tradition of independent Filipino cinema, which it doesn't start with Lino Broca, it's even before, it's even almost in the very beginning.
Yeah.
So how do you perceive that in terms of tradition, the relationship between narrative and history, narrative and myths, narrative and land?
Yeah, it's so good to listen to him now. Why don't you continue the talk, man?
No,
we just listen to you.
No, you are the one. Come on.
Yeah. Cinema in Asia started in the Philippines. It was 1898, right? The Lumiere film was shown in Manila, January of 1897. They toured Asia and they stopped in Manila. They showed it in Binondo, the Lumiere film. And a month before the Lumiere film was shown, our national hero was shot by the Spanish. And a year later, after the Lumiere showed the film, an Englishman did a documentary about the killing, the murder of our national hero. And that started cinema in Asia. Yeah, that's the provenance about it. So, yeah, you talk of tradition, then we have this long, long history of doing cinema in Asia. Very dynamic cinema the Philippines was, and until now it's still very dynamic. And we love that heritage, and I'm part of that. Yeah.
And how do you, when you are doing your films, your film has changed a little bit. At the very beginning,
I'm continuing the discourse. A big part of the discourse of my cinema is confronting and examining the Filipino psyche, the Filipino struggle, confronting our past, the mistakes of the past, the gains of the past. And a lot of my films, they're anchored on different epochs and different period of the history of my country and Southeast Asia. Evolution of a Filipino family, the 10-hour film is about this family, evolving and suffering during martial law. Badang West Side is post-martial law film. And then there's more, there's a lot. The Golden Lion film in Venice was 1997, the year when the Philippines was declared as the most dangerous place for Chinese and rich people because it became the kidnap capital of Asia. So all my films are epocha in a way. They anchor themselves on certain periods, like landmarks in the history of my people and my country. So it's a continuum. My cinema is connected to the works of the old masters, in a way, the way we make cinema there. we, of course, we talk about our struggles, our attributes as a very unique culture in that part of the world.
Yes, because that is quite clear when you see a Filipino film. There is always something which is addressing about the history of the country, which is extremely complex with different invaders.
Yeah, there's a lot of discourse around it.
Sorry?
There's a lot of discourse on history, of course.
All the time. Through different ways, because if you see Jean Torre films, it's certain ways, Raya Martin is in another way, and you, of course. Now I would like to leave a little bit the tradition and start with you by itself, which is also connected with the tradition, but it's especially something that it's around you. West Side Avenue is a film that you made many years ago, but it's the first film that you have, which its length is 5 hours and something. Before that, you were more or less doing films between 1 hour and 40 minutes till 2 hours, no more than that. But it's a particular film. There is a shift, even though that the film is taking place in New Jersey,
New Jersey, New York.
New York. So it's not yet the space that you are always doing your films, but the time changed. There is a kind of mysterious way of understanding the need that a film should have another kind of extension. Since then, you have been doing films. You have some shorts. You have some films about 2 hours, but they are really few, between 5 and 9 hours. On one hand, it's quite unique to do films. First of all, if you do films with such a length, you know by heart that you will never be rich, because it's very difficult to people to go to watch the film.
Cinema is not for sale, so so it's not anchored on the tyranny of money.
But I would like to understand two things at the same time, from a macro point of view and from a micro point of view. From a macro point of view is the one that I said. Your films has a kind of length. But at the same time, the way that the composition of the shots, sometimes it could take between 9, 10, 12 minutes. It depends of the case. So what is the basis, the need that you work through time in cinema in those ways?
It's simple. I want to see things more, and to see things more, you have to have an expanse that doesn't really manipulate your perspective. Because I was telling you guys a while ago that the camera can only take so much at once, but as much as I can in the frame, I want to see what I wanted to see. I don't want to do the cut to cut to impose your perspective. I want you to be like me. I want to see this universe. That kind of perspective. And it's also a matter of consciousness. I just want to be the observer and a witness. I want to simplify things in a way.
But at the same time, for some viewers, it's not simple to...
Because you're so used to being manipulated by the full coverage kind of cinema, where you do a lot of cut to cuts, and then you put, noise or huge music there to pull your emotions, and you're part of it. But it's manipulation,
But in order that it works, the length of a shot, you have to understand in certain ways where the camera should be stand. And then I have something to ask about that, because most of your last couple of films, there is almost no movement in the camera. The camera is always fixed shots. But in certain moments, even if we are watching the films, there are 3 films being shown here. If we see the dead on the land of the Encantos, there is certain moments that there is movement in the camera, but in the other 2, you don't have. So I would like to ask, because if you are not precise, the shot in itself doesn't justify itself. So what are you looking for in order that the shot works as it should be?
I do some, before I make a film, I do a lot of, location hunts, the so-called location hunting. And if I see a place where it's appropriate or it approximates the thing that I want in the film, the geography specifically, then I'll settle on that. And I will have to study the whole place. I will have to understand it. And by the time we shoot, it's, the framing would be very easy because there's already this aesthetic template in terms of geography. I know how and where and when and why the characters will move. I know where the so-called habitat. It's more of that, an understanding of the place, a real understanding of the place as much as I can. Yeah. That makes it easier in a way to do the framing, Yeah.
You always work, especially since the last 10, 15 years, you always work in locations. So I think there is also a kind of understanding of the territories that you choose to do a film. Sometimes it's connected with ecosystems, just to put it in certain ways. Again, I ask you the relationship between territory, time, and ways of being, because also your films, in certain ways, claims for the viewer to be ready to wait.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's not easy to learn to wait. Most of the people, they don't want to wait.
It is the most important thing in life. The waiting is very important, yeah. For me, it's fundamental in our existence, the issue of waiting. You wait for the whale to come out, and when it comes out, it's magical, it's transcendent, it will change you. So waiting, don't worry, just wait. So for me, it's fundamental, really. The question of existence, for me, that's very important. I am very much informed by the way the Malay people live. Filipinos are Malay, especially in the place where I grew up, in Maguindanao, in the southern part of the country, and you see a lot of that. The indigenous peoples are just sitting, waiting and waiting under the trees. And you think it's laziness or indolence. It's not. It's their way of life. It's an ideological thing. For them, it's very important. It's even spiritual for them to be just sitting and sitting. And you have to respect that. It's beautiful. It's poetic. Yeah.
But what is interesting from a point of view of cinema is that you have absorbed that kind of ontological position of the Malayans, of the Philippines, and you have been able to transform in a poetics.
Yeah.
So I try to understand how it works, in the sense that I give you an idea that I have, maybe it's wrong. You usually have a kind of tendency to use wide angle, diagonal shots, which allows to see from a certain perspective, and the depth of field is outstanding, because you could see so far away someone who maybe appears in the visual perception, some sounds that sometimes you don't see in the visual perception. So there is a kind of there is a complex poetics in order to render a simple way of being, which is from those land, those way of being in the Malayans and so on. Sometimes it's beautiful, for instance, in the Death of Encantos, the Death in the Land of Encantos, that you are watching and somehow, there is someone coming. But you have to be aware of it, otherwise you suddenly appears like if there were magic, but it was not magic. He was or she was coming little by little. So I'm asking this because the idea, I think, is to learn through a master how cinema is done in terms of the poetics of a filmmaker.
I'm not a master.
Yeah, you're a master, come on.
What's the question again?
You don't say that you're a master, I say that, so that's the best way to
go on. Yeah.
But anyway.
Yeah, I don't, just think about the word, expanse, expanse. So for me, cinema should be the way, You see this expanse, you see this thing, or you call it in painting the canvas. There's a lot. It's mysterious, it's limitless, it's fucking infinity. So a frame must reveal something at least. A frame must engage you at least in a very, very magical and poetic way and realist way as well. So that's the thing for me. If I watch cinema, I want to see an expanse where I can discover something, I can relate to something, or something ambiguous that will, compound me so. That's the thing for me, that's cinema. So every time I frame the thing, I'm also part of the so-called audience, What am I gonna see in this frame? What is it, the thing that will nourish my soul after watching this frame? Those are the most important things for me, watching a frame or watching the image, the so-called image, yeah.
Because something which is quite surprising, Lav, is that you are the director, you write the script, you do the editing, you do the cinematographer, you do everything. Sometimes you are in front of the camera also.
Yeah, I'm a fascist.
No,
motherfucking fascist. Fuck them, yeah. No, it's just that I'm become so comfortable doing my work that way.
Yeah, but it's very difficult for any filmmaker to find, first of all, to be divided in so many portions of the work, but also to, especially when you are editing, when it's a moment that you should have a distance towards what you have been in. Yeah. So, but you do everything. So there must be precise ideas of what you have been doing in the last couple of years.
You presume a lot of personas in a way.
A lot
of personas. You assume it's like Jekyll and Hyde.
Okay.
Yeah. If you're the director, then act like the director, the tyrannical director, the emperor. Or the fascist. But when you do the editing, that's another thing. So you become the musician now. You become the poet now. You become, the thing who looks for the beat. You look for the rhythm. You look for the syllabical measures of the thing. You look for the melody. So you assume these personas, just like, a schizophrenic person who has 5 personalities, you like when I'm directing, and then before that, if I do the design, then I'm the designer. I focus on that. What's the look of Roger? What is the color that suits him? If he's a doctor, he should look like a doctor. So you do that thing, in a very clinical way at least. You work on that. And if I do the cinematography, I look for that expanse, that the thing that will suit the director's whims or what he wants. So it's like that. I've been working with production since I was young, doing TV works as a PA, as a utility man, and then I become an assistant director, the designer. So I've done all those works during my younger days. So yeah, I understand how to do it. I have, assumed those personas so many times before, so, yeah.
I'm working in films which the length of the shots are so long, and the films in itself are so long.
Yeah.
One of the mysteries of cinema is rhythm.
Yeah.
So how do you perceive that in your films?
Well, I'm also a musician. I write songs. I play. I have a band. So you.
We have to play together.
Yeah, we should do that. He's a musician, a great guitarist actually. Yeah, he plays so well with the guitar. Oh yeah, you know that when you jump, especially with a free-flowing jump, at first it's chaos. There's disorder. There's disarray, and at some point, you go through a zone where everything is moving now. It's like a river, and when you see that, oh, this is working now. So you find that as well in cinema when you're editing it. Even when you're shooting, you shoot with editing in your mind. You're looking for that flow. You're looking for that kind of fluidity in your work. The session, the jam session is so good. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
There was once in a while that you find in any of your films a problem that you didn't feel like that flowing was not happening?
Yeah, a lot of times. What makes it really blocked or you see that it's not working is when you have a lot of doubts and fears, actually. It's more on that, the fear and the doubts. And you feel like a fraud doing those scenes or doing this story or giving the perspective or vision of the work. For me, that's the hardest part, how to overcome those fears and doubts when doing a scene or doing the film itself. The best thing is to just keep going, do the verisimilitudes of the work, do the little things, don't work on big things while shooting, and at some point you realize that, yeah, it's working, yeah, it's flowing, there's fluidity. Just look for the verisimilitudes, the little things that will connect things in the film, that will push the narrative, that will add more to the color of the character. So, yeah, I work on those things that way, to fight my fears, to fight my doubts. I keep shooting, I keep writing, and it flows at some point. It will flow.
There is something in the... I forgot to say also that you write poetry, and you, for some of your films, you also write the lyrics and the music. And it's quite clear in the previous film, before The Halt. In fact, you did another film. You did a film with Brillante Mendoza and
the trilogy.
Yes, The Journey is called, right?
Oh, The Journey, with Kidlat Tahimik.
Yeah, there is something also which is quite surprising. Even though that your films are so long, you almost are doing between 1 or 2 films per year in the last 3-4 years.
They overlap, because I have so many unfinished films, actually, 5, 6 films. I'm so used to doing that kind of process where things get protracted in a way at some point because the actor is gone or the money is gone or so many vicissitudes in working. Sometimes it goes back and forth, so you have to stop. So I have 5, 6 unfinished works, but I will finish them. Like Evolution of a Filipino Family, I shot the film for 10 years, so yeah, I'm not afraid that they stay long that way. They go moribund, and at some point you have to relieve them. You have to re-energize the thing and work on it again. So yeah, I will finish them. Yeah.
Let's talk about a little bit how the narrative is organized, because it's quite clear that
there is no narrative. Because I work on ideas and then I write the script usually during the shoot. I wake up at dawn at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock and write the material for the day.
That's the way you work?
Yeah, yeah. And I just follow, again, you work on the little things. What will happen to Manuel today? So I just write some things for Manuel, some scenes. What will happen to Matilda today? So I'll write things for her. What will happen to the mayor today? And then when the sun rises, I go to the group. I go to the designer, read this, we will shoot this today. I go to the other guys, the costume designer, you know, we will use Matilda today and Manuel. So we have little discourse, and then when the actors come, we talk about it, and then we shoot 4 or 5 scenes a day. Slowly, yeah.
So that's the method of how
and I have to bring them to remote islands so that they couldn't escape. I tell them to live with me for a month or 2 months in an island, and that's it. When we get out of this island, I tell them there's a film, okay? Yeah. But some people escape, that's why we couldn't finish them. Yeah.
For instance, The Halt. How long does it take? How long did it take to?
The Halt, we shot it for 2 months, but the pre-production took us like almost 5 months. Yeah, it came by accident. It wasn't planned. The Halt wasn't planned.
And you work like this, like today we are going to resolve this issue.
Yes.
It's always like that.
Yeah, it used to be not like that, but through the years I've developed that process.
Learned this is the way.
This is the way to go about it. It's fresh and it's very ambiguous. It's very mysterious. You know, the process where I tell them we'll just have to discover things every day. Just go with the flow, go with me, and then we'll discover things. Even the actors, they're always excited in the morning. They call it the flying papers because they have coffee and the assistant director will come, here's your paper for the day, and then they'll be ready, that's me. So they're discovering things every day as well, and they're excited, and they will come to you, can I add this thing, Lav? Okay, we'll do that. Okay, we'll work on it. So it's growing every day as well.
Because it's fascinating how for me, there is a narrative finally, because there is. But the narrative, first of all, is absolutely very, very far from the idea that a narrative should be organized in 3 acts. There will be a main conflict, you know, the typical way. Something that Raúl Ruiz used to despise as what he used to call the central conflict. That every cinema is somehow organized by that, and he was saying it could be done like that, but it could not be done like that. When you see, when we follow your films, it's amazing how you start with that story, and somehow you are with someone else, and you're with someone else. So there is a kind of rhizomatic narrative, which is flowing, and it seems to be, it depends on the length, of course. But that is how I see how it works. So the way that you work somehow explain a little bit why it is like that.
Well,
I was wondering if we have the 3 films that we are showing here, because I think it's good to have that in. Maybe of the member of the audience have seen the film. We could talk a little bit about those films, because the experience is much nearer than to them and for me and to you also. And I see in the 3 films there are different approaches to issues on Philippine life, Philippine social political life. It's quite clear that The Halt is a strange sci-fi science fiction film which takes place in 2030. 34. Yeah. But it's here in certain ways.
It happened in the past.
It happened in the past.
The present and the future.
Yes. The other is in the past, in the 70s. The other is in the present. But in each film you have a way to address something historical, something which is always difficult in Philippine life. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, like what I said, I always anchor my work on certain epochs or landmarks or period of my people's history. Like if you watch, again, but on West Side, it's post-martial law, the effect of martial law within this diaspora, the Filipino community in New Jersey, how they're affected, by martial law. The same with most of my works. It's anchored on a certain epoch. Yeah, and The Halt, although it's set in the future, you can sense that it is the now and it also the past at the same time. So I anchor my works on very, very precise historical, narratives of my people so that I can really easily, work on it. It's part of the process as well. Understanding the period, understanding history, examining it, psychoanalyzing the characters, the way that period happened. So it's easier for me to be able to create the so-called narrative if I have an anchor like that.
Well, you have a character who is a kind of therapist, who is always saying the problem of forgetting, and the problem of memories, which is social memory and personal memories also. Of course, when we think about Filipino history, Filipino history is extremely violent.
It's violent and it's also beautiful. We have a very beautiful president now. Fuck him.
Yes, but there's people from Spain, people from the United States, and people from Japan. Maybe they're not so nice. So, but I think it's one of the main signs of your cinema is the way that you portray violence. I know that you don't like comparisons. I learned that in our previous experience talking together. There are other filmmakers from Filipina that sometimes when they try to address the problem, they show violence in certain ways that
very graphic,
extremely graphic. But you always chooses in your film. You always chooses the off-screen way of portrait violence, even when it's something terrible. In this film, in The Halt, there is a prostitute who is absolutely punished by someone who has some kind of pleasure in being pervert in that particular way. You have, for instance, in the Season of the Devil, you don't show, but you show a rape. So, tell me something about that.
I grew up in a very, very beautiful place in Mindanao, but at the same time it's very violent. I've seen a lot of deaths and violence in my youth. My province is called Maguindanao. Is in Mindanao, in the southern part of the country. There are so many indigenous peoples there, the Bilaans, the Manobos, the Tirorais, and the Maguindanaons, and Christian settlers. So during my growing up, at first it was like paradise. People coexist, the Muslims and the Christians and the pagans, the indigenous tribes, and then around 1969, it started to become violent. The Moro people, the Moro Filipinos, started to become politicized, and they want liberation, they want secession from the country. And Marcos reacted. So Marcos created all these, paramilitias at first to fight the Moro resistance, and it was bloody. I was in elementary. I've seen a lot of deaths. My parents are public school teachers, and they're so committed with educating the indigenous peoples, and we've seen, deaths, so much. So I grew up in that kind of setting, from paradise to hell, and that informs my psyche in a way. I don't want to see violence, but at the same time, I see it. I witness real violence in my life, graphically. One time me and my elder brother, we were coming from the school because we walked 5 kilometers every day. We passed by a small Muslim village, and they're all dead. Their houses are burning, and the military is piling up their bodies near the street. For me, that's a sight that stayed with me. I can still smell flesh until today, burning flesh, the smell of blood flowing like rivers. it stayed with me. So when I started doing cinema, I had a kind of fracture in my head, that kind of chasm, that kind of cataclysm in my psyche that, no, I don't want to show this because I respect the audience so much. I want you to feel it. I want you to sense it, to use your sensory, powers. I don't want to show real graphic things there because I understand that you can see it in a way. The cinema, the power of cinema is seeing through the image, seeing through the sound. You don't have to show everything to make people understand,
And
Yeah.
now I will go back to something which is quite obvious. Most of your films are in black and white.
Yeah.
What is the decision behind it?
I love black and white.
You like that?
I told the audience a while ago that I grew up, although we live in a very, very remote place, 2-3 hours away from that bundok, that forest where we live. There's a small town called Tacorong. They have 4 cinemas, and my father was such a film addict. He was such a film addict that every weekend he will bring us to this town. We will sleep in the bus station and watch these 4 cinemas every weekend. And they're double bills, so we're watching 8 movies a week. And they're all in black and white. Beautiful black and white from Hong Kong, from Hollywood, the spaghetti westerns, the Filipino slapstick comedies. So it's beautiful. I grew up in that kind of setting where there's a lot of cinema, and the image lobe of my brain is full of black and whites. So it's a kind. For me, cinema is black and white, but I love color as well. Don't worry, I love color. I made color films, and I made 6 color films already. So yeah, black and white is another way of seeing life. It's another way of seeing existence, and it's another way of looking at the universe. When I was a kid, I always look forward to seeing that world, that black and white world. I'm escaping that very, very violent thing in my village. I'm escaping everything. I'm understanding the cultures of other, world, other, nations, other cultures. I'm witnessing. I say, one day I'm gonna go to Italy, and one day I'm gonna go to. These things transport me to other worlds. So I realize that the universe is so expansive, it's so wide because of cinema, and there are so many possibilities that cinema offered to me, like poetry, novel, everything, music. It gave me that kind of emancipation, seeing cinema in a very, very, fundamental way, morally, spiritually, and everything. It gave me so many things, and I'm so grateful with cinema. Yeah. It gave me faith in life as well, seeing a very, very violent world and then escaping to this universe. And you see Terence Hill, fighting. You see James Bond, kissing a beautiful girl. It's like, Yeah, very sexist James Bond. Yeah.
Maybe I don't know how it is planned, but according to what is written, we should be living in 8 minutes, which won't happen. So, at least I believe in democracy not only as a system, but as a way of life. And I would like to share the possibility to the audience to, if you have any question, to raise the hand and ask, if you like. Otherwise, I could go on forever.
There's a question there.
There?
My question is, how do you do the logistic while shooting, and the producer, or I think you produce yourself, but the financial, how do they trust that you finish your film, that there's money in it? Because in Germany, I cannot imagine how this kind of work works. I don't do such a movie in Germany, I think.
I was just,
because you have a name,
No, but you know, in the early days it's so hard. But it's just that I was so stubborn. I started making cinema that way. So I borrowed cameras from friends and just started shooting. I didn't think about money at all. When I started shooting Evolution of a Filipino Family, I was working in New York in a Filipino newspaper, and I had to do 3 jobs. I was a waiter, I was a gasoline attendant, I was doing, you know, so many things just to buy the $80 16 millimeter roll every weekend. You know, I did that, working and working. I wrapped these rolls, put them in the refrigerator. Once I have 30 rolls, I asked my filmmaker friends to lend me some camera, and then I started shooting Evolution of a Filipino Family that way. So it's, you know, I want to make cinema, you know, no matter what. I was so poor, I was raising a young family, but I want to do cinema. So I did it the hard way. And at some point, that kind of notoriety, you know, rubbed on people, and they started noticing. And some festivals started showing my works, and that did it, you know. But my cinema is still not for sale, man. There's still no money, don't worry. Yeah. As a consequential thing, there's money now. I can have coffee, but it's not, you know, I don't look for that, yeah.
Yes, please.
Thank you, Lav. You were talking about fear. What is your biggest fear right now?
There's a lot, man. The biggest fear now is what is going to happen to our country. He's from the Philippines.
Yes.
Yeah. There are almost 30,000 deaths now with this new government, with this new president, and we're still not moving. There's no tipping points, so to speak. Where are we heading, you know? Morally, we're going to the abyss. Spiritually, our country is going to the abyss. And it will change a whole lot. The perspective of our people, the psyche. It will take another 100 years to change all this very degenerative, you know, perspective that's being born by this very, very corrosive government. So that's my biggest fear, you know. It's so devastating to our people. We just don't realize it. Yeah.
I want to appreciate very much that you shared your childhood and as youngster, and then, you know, the whole your biography. Thanks a lot. I'm born in Iran, and I have experience. I'm an actor here in Germany.
Yeah.
Experienced actually this violence. But I was wondering because you emphasized an expansion, and expansion is very important for you, and it's really great. Do you think that like cinema of Kiarostami is somehow near to your cinema for our country, for Iran?
Abbas's work is very influential to us, you know. Even Mohsen Makmalbak, and Mohsen is a good friend, yeah. They have different cinemas, Mohsen's and Abbas's, yeah. In their own terms, they're all very important works. They're all very important perspectives, yeah. Yeah, Abbas's work is really, really into the issues of dialectics, so to speak, investigating a certain culture, you know, a certain narrative of a certain nation. The way he treated his cinema is so unique. The way he uses children, the way he uses journey, the way he mixes documentary and narrative. It's so unique, so generous. You know, it's so very, very, very inspiring in a way for me as a filmmaker. The same with Mohsen's work, which is very political and very hardcore. I love the works of Mohsen as well. Yeah.
Because this sentence of you, it's wonderful. I mean, every and each of us, we have to do the way that you do, like make a film. you talked about this trip that you made to explore.
Yeah.
And I thought, Kiarostami was also in this.
Yeah. He is very in the moment.
Yeah.
An earthquake happens, he goes there, he creates a narrative around it. That's cinema. It should be part of our lives. It should extend to what's happening. Cinema is the now always. It should be that way.
I really appreciate what you said to us.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to give a feedback because I watched The Halt today and I was surprised that the German audience also stayed for 5 hours because
Why?
the way we look at time is different. I'm from Indonesia, so it's very much
Yeah. We're both Malays.
so we see the time also the same. In Indonesia also we take time for everything. We wait. Waiting is part of
Very
our
important,
way
yeah.
of life. So it tells me that it's like really your film is really good, and the European audience stayed today, even the ones who went to the bathroom they came back. So which is
Yeah, thank you.
good.
Women in your film of today are as brutal as men when in dictatorship. Is that a warning or an experience, or already an experience of nowadays?
I created characters in a very, very equal way. So, it's all about respecting the this tough side of our lives, the so-called, it should be equal in a way. But every time I make characters, I'm very objective about who they are. Always, I try to be very objective. The truths of the truths of the perspectives, their attributes, even their habitats. So it's always that way. So creating women characters, I always drew from the women of my life, my mother, my sister, the Filipinos, the Malay women, how they move. So in a way, so many reacted with those two characters, the lesbian characters, like, oh, it's really not so Filipino. I said, it's very Filipino. So they reacted. I think it's something new to them to show a very, very liberal way of showing relationship in a Filipino movie. Yeah, but there are previous works that dealt with it. Those the issues of gender. So many Filipino films have done that already. Yeah. One more question.
There is any? I have a question, but may I allow myself? It's about the last two films you have portrayed presidents who are or leaders who are extremely violent. This one, in The Halt, is outstanding because it's a guy who is always waiting for his mother, talking with her when she's not, when he goes to see her, she's in absent.
Schizophrenia.
The previous one, you have that mysterious guy who has double face.
The Janus face. Yeah.
Janus face. So, can't you talk about the way that you? Because I think, especially in this last occasion, you ridiculize a little bit, but you respect at the same time.
Yeah,
as a guy who is still
they're human beings. Yeah. Hitler is still a human being. He's just mad, he's just dark, and we allowed him to kill 6 million Jews. We allowed him, The same thing with other leaders. We're still allowing Assad to murder the Syrians. There are already how many Syrian deaths now? More than 500,000. And we allowed that. Motherfucking ass, we allowed that. How can we allow that, Putin is still, doing his very, very violent ways all over that area of the world, and we allow it. I don't know. How can we allow these things? Egypt is going to an abyss. Yemen is sinking and sinking bloodily. Hong Kong is right before our eyes every day now. So I don't know. It's all about that. Allowing madmen, despots, dictators, psychotic people, we allow them to rule us. I think that's the greatest paradox of humanity. How can we allow madmen to rule us? We should check ourselves in the mirrors. Why? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yes.
In the Duterte administration in the Philippines, we can already say it's kind of authoritarian.
Yes, yeah. You can say it.
You've experienced any kind of censorship because your works are very politically compromising. And have they, what kind of reaction has the Duterte government?
Well, I said it a while ago that Duterte and his cohort, they don't care about culture, so they just care about their enemies, so-called enemies. They don't care about the art, so we're safe. Yeah, we're safe, yeah. He's fucking ignorant, yeah. And again, we allow him to do these things to us, so it's terrible.
I have a small question about language in your movies.
Language, yeah.
Yeah, because obviously the history is reflected in the language, the history of colonization. How do you...
You mean the form or the Tagalog language? The language of cinema?
No,
the language spoken in the
The spoken, Malay Tagalog, yeah.
The Spanish influences, the English influences.
Yeah. It's part of us.
Yeah, I'm gonna admit I'm not 100% sure how current contemporary languages on the Philippines sound like, but from what I've seen in your movies, there's always the presence of the history. How do you negotiate that in your scripts?
You have to embrace it. Like, English is the second lingua franca of the Philippines. The major papers, broadcasts, media, it's all in English. Academia, the academy is in English. Although the great mass, they still speak Tagalog. In the middle, we speak Visayan. In the south, we have 99 dialects in the southern part where I grew up. But it's a very, very mixed up kind of language where, although the foundation of the so-called national language is Tagalog, if you listen to it, there's a lot of Spanish words in it and some English. And sometimes we shift to a whole sentence of English and then we shift back to Tagalog. That's the Filipino language. Yeah.
At the start, you said that it's very unique for a director, especially for the cinema, to shoot movies or to have movies 5 or 9 hours. But do you think that nowadays the people love to have longer stories, especially when you see what happens with Netflix and all this serious binge watching? I mean, if I watch something, a series is also like 8 or 9 hours, and I love to see it in a row. Do you think that that is something that people want more to have long stories?
Yes, I think so. There's still space for that, and we will still push for that. I call it greater cinema in terms of commitment and perspective. It's.
Yeah, because you feel the characters, you feel them deeper.
Yeah.
For example, if someone dies, I feel more.
I think we should, as a filmmaker, it keeps my faith in cinema will remain as long as it is engaging things like these things, fighting orthodoxies, fighting models and paradigms that don't allow us to think. They're more destructive, they're more corrosive, they're more retrogressive than progressive in a way. Netflix, HBO, or television, do you think it's pushing humanity to a greater level? No. So they've been there forever, but they're not doing anything actually. You know, it's the paradox again of humanity. Why, yeah, we allow these things. Yeah.
Are you afraid that cinema is gonna die?
It's not gonna die. There will be filmmakers who will fight for things. You know, I don't think art will die, or the exercise on aesthetic, whatever it is, will die. No, it will not die. You know, I still have faith in that exercise. You know, the issue of nourishing the soul. For me, aesthetic exercise is that, how to nourish the soul of humanity. And cinema must be that way for me. I'm committed to that kind of praxis. Yeah.
But if the development is like that, in 10 years, the actors who are not used anymore, and you know, there are going to be virtual actors, you know.
We'll make a film. Let's talk. We'll make a film.
We'll make a film together.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
It's my honor. My honor.
Thank you.
But, you know, what do you think about the future of cinema? In 10 years, are we going to have still?
Yeah, it's still, you know, it's still the same. You know, there's still Hollywood. There's still be, you know, committed filmmakers outside. You know, it's still the same. You know, it will stay the same. But yeah, cinema will not die. The exercise on aesthetic, on pushing humanity to greater heights will not die. You know, I believe in that.
Okay, you're very optimistic. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Although my films are dark, but yeah, they're very hopeful in a way. Yeah, it's all about dialectics, examining, investigating what we are, what we've been, and what we'll be. Yeah. Yeah. Let's drink now for humanity.
Okay. We close? Okay.
Up to you, man.
No more questions? No more? Ah.
Okay.
She has.
Well, yeah, I have a lot of questions. Okay. I don't know how it is in the Philippines, you know. In Indonesia, in my country, it's not far from your country.
Yeah.
So we have big cinemas in the cities.
It's the same. We have the malls, yeah.
Yeah, okay. In the Philippines,
Yeah, we have the big malls, yeah.
what I love about Hamburg is that we have a lot of Programmkinos, it's called.
Yeah.
They show like all kind of films.
The cinematic culture, yeah.
We don't have that, right?
It's starting.
We do have.
It's starting now. We have micro cinemas now. We have 4 micro cinemas, little cinemas outside of the malls. Yeah, and young people are starting these things. Yeah, it's good.
The question is like we have this ASEAN, you know, ASEAN like EU here. So how do the filmmakers working together? Do you have like
Yeah. We have a group, and Philippine cinema or Southeast Asian cinema is very dynamic now. I just came from Malacca, and there's the Sea Shorts. It's all short film festivals from our region: Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, Singapore, and parts of Taiwan. It's so good. You see young people converge and talk about everything from politics to religion to what's happening in the world. So it's very inspiring to see young people. I was head of the jury, and the works are so good, you know. They're so good, you know. Very, very, you know, into the discourse of the now. Yeah. So good, yeah. So let's drink.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.